Good afternoon. Today is Monday, June 16th. It is 1:01 p.m. and we will call this budget meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda? I don't have any. No? Then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor? Aye?
Yay?
Okay, motion passes 3-0. And then moving on to the next item is discussion and reviewing of the budget documents. Does anybody want to kick this off? Well, actually, you know what? I prepared a statement. Let me read my statement first, and then we'll get into discussion here. So, I had a few days to go over everything, and anyways, this budget represents more than just a financial plan. It is a statement of intent, one that reaffirms our commitment to responsible fiscal stewardship, transparent governance, and the strategic investment of taxpayer dollars within our fiscal budgeting. Over the past year, we have undertaken a careful and honest assessment of our county's financial health. We've acknowledged where previous administrations may have fallen short, whether through unchecked spending, lack of oversight and accountability, or missed opportunities for growth and reform. While we examine the past actions of previous administrations, our duty is to find and correct its faults. And I am proud to say that this budget reflects progress in that direction through the consistent efforts of our current administration, Director of Operations, and department heads. Through diligent effort, collaboration, and tough decision-making, we have produced a balanced budget that not only meets our statutory obligations, but also helps in restoring public trust in our financial processes. We have taken a disciplined approach, aligning expenditure with revenues, reducing inefficiencies, and prioritizing services that deliver the greatest value to our constituents. This budget is not simply about balancing, quote, the books. It is a forward-looking document grounded in a new vision of financial responsibility, one that values both stability and strategic investment. We are directing taxpayer dollars toward infrastructure that lasts, public safety systems that work, and community programs that empower. In doing so, we are planting the seeds for a long-term resilience and prosperity for our county. As we move forward, I invite each of you to remain active participants in shaping this renewed financial future. Your insight, oversight, and commitment to fiscal responsibility are vital as we build a more transparent, accountable, and service-driven county government. I am confident that together we can continue this momentum and fulfill our shared mission, which is to provide responsible, effective, and forward-thinking government for the people of Curry County.
Thank you, Chair.
See, we have a new document here. Did the committee get this?
They did.
As well? Okay.
These were some preemptive questions that Rabia and Nick did their best to prepare some answers for. They came in from Budget Committee members.
Okay.
I don't know how you want to do that. You want to just go over each one?
I don't know if they're necessary. I mean, a lot of it is it's just having a moment to consume it. If there's questions about the answers, I would assume we'd probably ask those, but.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't entertain anybody who wants to start with going through this. If they have any questions or want some clarifications on any of the budget spreadsheets that were in the packet, we can go through all that.
Yeah, I might have a couple of questions. Just trying to read some of the answers here. So generally speaking, and this may just be labeling, but going through all the budgets, it talks about, we have actual numbers in 23, but it talks about 24 and 25 are budgeted numbers we're comparing to. Is that accurate or not? Or is 24 actual or budget?
So the 24, here's the 24 actuals through May 31. So we printed out a copy to review. We just didn't have enough time. Oh,
Yeah, just curious.
okay.
I'm just curious, so I guess my.
So their actuals through, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, their actuals through May 31.
Yes.
Yes,
Of 24.
24.
Okay, so where are we at today in 25? Do we have any actuals?
On the top is a 25 up there.
Oh, yes. Sorry, this is May 31, 25.
Oh, 20, okay.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
I apologize.
So why would we not have actuals in 24 on here?
Because we didn't have the approved budget, or we didn't have the approved audit.
Right. So you remember, we were behind 2 fiscal years in our finances, in our reconciliations.
Okay.
So those haven't been fully audited for a final.
Okay. All right. And I guess my point is, as we look at budgeting, we want to budget against actual as much as we can, right? Not against budget. So
Yeah.
looking at 24, do we know how we did? Do we have an idea?
Well, we have a really good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then 25.
It's been submitted to Moss Adams.
Okay. And then, do we do any forecasting? So we've got 1 month left, so we're through May, caught up through May, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 1 month left to forecast after
Yeah.
the year.
Which is going to be more accurate than normal, because we would, in a normal circumstance, when we would had a finance director that was through the whole process, we would be forecasting the last 2.5 months. We would be getting this adopted much sooner than so they're actually going to be a little more accurate.
Right, so I guess my question, maybe Nick, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm sorry. But if you've got actuals through 25, how are we looking with this 25 budget that we did a year ago, right? We're comparing 26 now to the budget we prepared last year. So how are we doing?
I think we're
fine, we have that.
Here, you want to grab a microphone and sit at this table since Dave's not here?
I'm here online now, guys.
Hey, Dave.
Hello. Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
So as far as the actuals, the budget, we are in good standing as far as what I know up till today. So nothing abstract or crazy. That answers your question.
So, Treasurer Vecino, would you maybe grab your microphone and just sit here, and then when we get to public comment, we can put it back.
Well, that helps. I mean, I'm just thinking, because we're, as all of us I'm sure do, as we go through these numbers, we're looking at what we're budgeting for this next year. We're comparing it to what we did a year ago. My question was just,
Yeah.
we're really looking at good numbers.
Right.
Yes, we are. We just got the email for 22-23 audit is done. Then we're going to start on the 23-24, try to get that done as quickly as possible so we're all completely caught up. Mhm.
Fair enough on that. Some stuff you want to hit?
You want to keep going?
Okay.
I guess, yeah, on that, looking at past stuff, trying to follow the trends from, clear back to 22, 23 is the only actual that we have, so I think that's just, as we move forward, that's the difficult part of really knowing what was actually spent. And then that kind of ties into, last year was the first year that we switched the, I guess, from occupancy to an FTE algorithm or equation for what goes back to admin services. So not being able to, truly see how that impacted most of the departments. I mean, following the numbers, it looks like it was a significant increase upon each department for what they're paying for admin services compared to the past occupancy equation. I don't know if that's something you guys saw as well, or if I'm adding numbers wrong.
No, you're not. I mean, I think the thing is so before, it would have been in different line items as opposed to a lump, right? So it would have been maintenance, HR, IT, right? All these things down the line as opposed to calculated as a per employee basis on those services.
Well, correct, yeah. I mean, it's finance, payroll, council, occupancy, IT, BOC, commissioners, which then got all condensed last year's budget into due admin.
Right.
So when you add up all those line items comparative to admins, I did all those, if I look at the clerk, I think adding up all those line items was 40,000 one year, and then changing to the FTE was 95,000. Assessor went from 109 to 211. Interesting one I saw too, the fair went from 9,000 to 70,000. So, not being able to see what that audit, showed if that money truly went there, or assessing how that all.
Right, or if it was being misassessed beforehand, right? Because we haven't increased the costs, in terms of the admin didn't grow, is my point, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So,
Not to say that occupancy wasn't too low to beforehand, but then, finding
right,
that
what,
correct ground is.
and I think what happened there is the previous finance director pointed that out in the last budget, that it was not being dispersed essentially accordingly, on a basic FTE basis. It was done with a calculation probably that was pretty antiquated, which is why there was discrepancies probably across the board, so.
I think, I don't know, maybe it's
But that's a good question.
Pretty big jump from what was previous to what was, our first trial at the FTE last year.
The other thing, I think, I just, in that overview statement, I was just struggling with that paragraph about the budget combined is a total of 64 million, which includes all revenues and expenditures for county departments fiscal year July 1 through June 26. 239 less than the previous year. The total budget, not including road funds, is 26 million, which is a $37 million difference. But I didn't get to that calculation. And I might not have looked at the right spot, but I was trying to.
I think the numbers got inversed, so I think it's the minus the road funds of 26 million is a budget of 37, as opposed to the other direction.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
That'll probably be corrected, so it gets on the website now too, so. And, just in general for the public, you really don't have a $64 million budget.
No,
And so I think that's not probably the best way to present that.
I 100% agree. I don't know how the other budget committee members feel, but it is not reflective. I've also struggled with the county. We've done a lot better this year cleaning up internal transfers, but typically there would be numerous internal transfers, and essentially then at that point you're counting the same dollar twice in two budgets, which makes it look much more inflated than it actually is.
And as you point out, it looks like 26 of that is reserves.
Plus their operation, right? So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's not, anyway, I think that probably could have been a little better stated, I guess you concur, so, okay.
Well, in the budget, what Nick was just talking about is an example of, but it shows it twice, right? It shows it in the budget for the department, and then it shows an admin budget where it's being used. So again, it's the same dollar being identified twice in the budget. Which,
There should be a transfer on the revenue side, though, right?
right, but it's on both sides, right? It's in their budget, and then it's expended over here as a service. So I would agree. I think it would be great if we could have basically a total operational cost. What does it actually, dollar for dollar, cost to run the county?
I'd call it a roll-up, I don't know what you call it, but if you had a roll-up for the whole county,
Yeah.
I think it'd be great to look at some point if you, I know it's
And
kind of the essence here, but I think that'd be a great thing to look at. So,
If I was going to be real rough about it, eight in the sheriff, 6 in the roads, and then roughly 2.5 for the remainder of the services. 2.5, 3. If you were just looking at actual dollar spent. That's obviously real rough.
and then I just had a question on the health, personal cost, including health insurance, based on last year's budget amount of something, okay. So the health insurance is based on per employee, right? And PERS is probably per each employee, right, based on their salary and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why, with the time constraints that we had, we did a blanketed 7.5% guesstimate. That's obviously going to have to be refined. And the other thing I want to point out is that, this budget is obviously pretty raw, right? We haven't had time to dial in the minute details. That's why we were just going with status quo with the know that we had the ONC to cover that 7.5 projected dollars, with the anticipation that in the fiscal year's quarter one, we would be doing a much more in-depth supplemental, looking at, once we get Rogue Valley Council of Governments, they'll be fully invested in our financial department. We'll have time to actually see what those real decalculated details look like.
Tag team here, do you want to do the key?
Let's see, I was going to revenue for that general fund.
You answered, I just asked the question, how many, you had 112 positions, how many are unfilled? You answered that with 15 positions are unfilled, so.
Some of the next ones, like on the general fund, we're talking about the ONC funds coming in. We have one line item, that's the BLM ONC land, and then the miscellaneous revenue, which looks like the 944,000. So, have we gotten past ONC lands each year, and then this is an additional 944,000 on top of what we've done? Otherwise, we're counting the same thing twice.
No, we only got ONC this first year. We got ONC. It was this year.
Last year it was SRS.
SRS funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened with that is when Eric was helping us up, he threw it in miscellaneous revenue, but it is going into ONC line.
Okay, so our total will be like 2 million for ONC this year. So.
No, 944.
That has to be edited and corrected because it's counted toward.
Your question is, what's the other 1,170,000 then?
Because that was a guesstimate from last year what we were going to get in. It was an estimate.
But then we've added the 944 as an additional line item.
Yes, so that needs to be corrected. Eric, we've talked about it, so we have to move it over to ONC where it's properly at.
Yeah, so right now this budget's showing $2 million coming in versus
945.
945.
Yeah.
I mean, this
Let's
is part
count
of
it
my
twice.
concern, like, as we're trying to shotgun this through. I mean, I don't feel comfortable just passing something through to say we're gonna do a supplemental in a month.
Just make sure you're saying, what he's saying, I asked the same question, so
Mhm.
are you saying then the number should be 944, not 1,000,001?
Well, it should be 944 is what we actually got. We got it about a month ago, a little over a month ago.
So the 1,000,001's not accurate?
No, it's not accurate.
$1,000,001 was the
Estimate, $1 million was the estimate, and we
Was-
got
Well,
944.
and that's in revenue that's not there?
No, it's there, it's in, he put it in miscellaneous revenue. But if it's,
So they gave us, well, I get it, I don't think he's understanding your question. So, let's put it another way. So we got general fund, non-departmental. Do we, with those two line items, do we have 2,100,000 or do we have 944?
we have 944, so we actually got.
So we overstated it by 1,000,001?
So, yeah. Because it was,
So we gotta take that out.
take that out, yes.
Yeah.
Which would be the reason why he showed the contingency of almost $1 million in the budget that he reported last week. So we have to clean that up. I wish we had, if Eric would be here to help explain that.
Okay.
I am here. I'm having a hard time hearing the other half of the conversation, though.
Go ahead, Nick, you can
So
explain it
Eric,
better.
remember that miscellaneous revenue for ONC funds?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so there's two line items. There's miscellaneous revenue and then actual ONC funds. I was just wondering if that got doubled up on that part.
What's the number for it? Like, how much is the dollar amount now?
It was the dollar amount we actually got was 944. 944,000.
Okay.
I know we talked about this, but there was some confusion about it.
Let's see. Yeah, I have a note saying that we have additional revenue in the sum of approximately 944 coming in from timber receipts and C revenue, and we should be okay. So I put that 944 in miscellaneous revenue. Where else do you think it would show?
Does it show an ONC on your sheet? Yeah, I just didn't bring mine.
Would be, so the miscellaneous revenue that I have is in the general fund. Would the other LNC number be in the general fund as well?
Yes, it is. Non-departmental.
Yeah, there's an ONC number in the non-departmental of 1,170,000.
That's the estimate for this year.
So are you saying that are you saying those are supposed to be the same number?
Yes, well, we are estimating an increase for next year of about 1.7, but in miscellaneous revenue, I think we can take out that 944 because it's not miscellaneous.
Okay.
We actually got that in
I
this.
think I just need more Oh, you actually got it this year?
That was the confusion.
Oh, I see. Okay. Not a note in here.
So what's the answer here?
So the proposed budget's going to be 1.7, but that 944 was not supposed to be in there because we got it in this year.
So in your thing, I don't know if you noticed this, Dan, but it says the GL count number description will be adjusted for the sake of timing and distinguishing this year's payment from the 1.00149390332100000 line, which reads DOI BLM ONC lands 15.277. The unassigned fund balance remains identical from the previous fiscal year. So that's what, looks like what Rabia and had identified there.
Yeah, so removing that 944 drops the contingency down to 93,500-ish.
Which is what we were last year.
That's the.
Yeah, last year was like 80,000. Yeah.
Right. That's what I was trying to explain.
Gotcha, okay.
And then the unassigned fund balance, 1,479,000, excuse me. What was that? Down a couple more lines. It's the same as last year.
Wait, can you hear him, Eric?
No, I heard there was a question about the unassigned.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah, going down a few more lines to unassigned fund balance, the 1,479,000. What is that?
It's, the unassigned fund balance is the amount of money that's left over in the general fund that hasn't been allocated to any expenditure.
Okay. And so it's exactly the same as last year. So we never used it, or? I don't understand how that works.
It just means it wasn't allocated. You do need some money in the general fund in July because the property tax revenue doesn't come in until November, so you don't really want to end the year with a zero there because starting the year becomes a big problem. And if that 1,479,000, I'm sure I just copied from last year and copied it over. And the contingency line that's at the very bottom is the one that I've been manipulating to balance the fund.
Oh, I said the 987.
Yes, that's probably, yes, yeah.
Oh, this is the new one they just gave us.
Oh, we got a new one.
So, in budgets, I'm used to seeing the unassigned, assigned, and non-spendable fund balance numbers. Those three numbers are usually at the very bottom of the page. And when you balance the fund, you kind of change what the balance is in the unassigned fund balance. I'm not sure why Curry County has it up above. It doesn't really matter, but I just copied the same number from last year over the 1.4 million. And then I've been manipulating the operating contingency line to be the makeup number to make sure that we're actually balanced.
Must be a government thing. I'm not sure I totally understand.
I don't know if I follow that one either.
What was that?
So where, Jay, where's the contingency number you're talking about that takes care of this?
So removing the 944 from the line takes the contingency down to, what did you say, Eric, 90,000 instead of what it was previously?
Yeah, I don't know what it was previously, but it is $93,565 right now after removing the 944.
There you go.
So we just got handed a sheet that had 1,037,000 in the contingency, and you're saying just taking the 944 off of that, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Got it, okay.
That was a good catch.
I wish I hadn't caught it. Yeah, I wish it wasn't true, but too bad to lose that revenue. Okay. So so then with that contingency, that doesn't change anything revenue-wise for the departments and just reduces our contingency. Okay. All right. Let's see here.
Yeah, the contingency number is there for unexpected occurrences. So having 93,000 in the contingency line, it may be a little low, but at least you have 93,000 to deal with any unforeseen circumstances that might happen in the general fund.
Which, Nick, just kind of leads to, sorry to take so much time here, you guys, but just the general question. So we had 944,000 we got in 25 that we didn't expect to get, right?
Yes, correct.
So where do we sit today with cash?
As far as our balances for everything.
Yeah, I mean, like, that was just we didn't have that in our budget last year.
It's an added bonus. It just covered what the increase in payroll costs that we were going to experience. But it's going to go up every year from now. Well, not from now on, but as long as next year it'll be more. But it was just money that was supposed to go to Secure Rural Schools Act that we get now straight to our general fund.
So to give you kind of an example, so last year, it's net less, but overall, but more for the county. I'll explain. So last year, we got 1.7 in SRS funds. And that is split up 75-25 roads and schools. So roads got 1 point something, 1.1, and then the other 1.6, or the other 6 was divided amongst the schools per their population. This year, that didn't occur. What did occur is O&C, which is what saved us with the O&C was it's non-discretionary, right? So we don't have to do the SRS split with it. It goes into your general fund.
You get 100% of it.
You get 100% of it. Now, there were some state timber dollars that came through that DOE recommended that we treat as SRS, but it was it was 595,000. So that was split 75-25 between the schools. So the schools ended up splitting about 149,000 as opposed to 600, which now they're reeling from as well.
But if we were on, what you're saying though, this year, you have the actuals through May, we're basically tracking what we budgeted, right?
Mm-hmm, correct.
So is it fair to say we have another 944,000 in cash that we didn't think we'd have?
Yes, exactly. That we didn't have, but we're going to use it. It saved us from using more of our reserves dollars, if that makes sense.
Or having to make cuts in staffing.
And we also got reimbursed from FEMA this year, so it has increased our road reserves, and we have.
Well, let me ask you this another way. So you've got statements through the end of May that you said are actuals, right?
Correct.
And we're adhering to budget, and we projected budgeted revenue last year. So with the revenue we budgeted last year at this time and tracked our expenses, you said we're on track through May.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
In addition to that, we got 944 grand.
Yes.
Okay. So that should be sitting, I mean, that's additional money we have on hand, right?
Yes. Yes.
It is, for the budget. Going into this budget to cover the increase in personnel costs. The 7.5% increase in personnel costs for all of our FTEs was 923,000.
Okay.
So basically, the 944,
So instead of using it, you got it last year, you're going to use it. I got you now. Okay.
yeah.
All right. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, I think we received it already, but we're going to budget.
Now that's, again, it's projected. So as when Eric had basically made the suggestion, look, we probably should project anywhere between 7.5% to 10% on increased personnel costs. If we went to the 10%, then we're going to be into that contingency. Or making cuts.
Yeah, the surveyor, that's fine, I got that. Yeah, just the road self-insurance, that's, you just self-insure yourself, is that what we're?
To an extent, it's monies that's available to repair. Historically, they had more money in that fund. They had a body shop and so forth. Now, we don't have a body shop, but we do have that remnant fund, which we apply to, like fixing equipment, not the basic. We have normal car insurance for all the vehicles in the pool.
That just rolls over every year, is that what that? Yeah.
Lynn, you have anything?
Not yet, still tracking. I mean, fortunately, we've been able to go over some of this, and it's good to catch up with the committee.
And on that, I had that question on the health insurance on this civil criminal patrol. Looked like, it looked a little out of whack by, in comparison to the rest of the minor thing, but I didn't bring it up. Oh,
You see the answer?
because the personnel budget, right? Okay. Sure.
Before we bounce too far off like the general fund, we talked about all the different transfers and sometimes, double counting some money. Looking at the TLT, coming into the general fund, I think the prior years, it had transferred directly into the sheriff budget before the general fund. Is that
No. Last year we changed that.
last year we changed?
Yeah.
I think the prior years were the year.
Prior year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And any reason why? Just extra transfers, right? It's just-
It is extra transfers. I'm not sure where we ended up last year with it. In some form, I'm sure it ended up, it might have been in jail or something, but I think that's actually where we ended up putting the discretionary funds was in jail. Because we had that big deficit that was being funded with the one-time monies,
Yeah.
which was the reason why we had many cuts across the entire county services, was to make up for those losses there, to keep that mandated service moving forward.
I'm looking for less transfers and directions. And then it was going to segue me into my next point on that TLT. For this year's budget, of any considerations of maybe holding some of that, we'll get to that tourism budget later, but holding some of it in kind of reserve in case that bill passes that could unlock some of that money into other departments. So if they're going to change the ratio of distribution there, when that decision comes.
Well, the nice thing about that is the money won't be spent. So if that decision is made, that is 100%, we can make all those adjustments in an immediate supplemental. So having them allocated, I think we're required to have them allocated in some capacity, whether it's contingency or not. If we pull them back into contingency, then that means we're going to be removing whatever they are funding. But if that happens where we have the capacity to unlock those dollars, I think what will end up happening is because right now, the money coming in that we anticipate is new, I think was 700 total. I know that the restricted portion of that, we are looking at doing basically a community grant program for individuals, for entities to increase the tourism and promotions platform. But that money won't be spent by the time we know the answer of whether or not that's going to be unlocked. And then if it's unlocked, then we just change course. We can reallocate those dollars as we see fit, if that's the choice. Yeah. So I guess the point is they won't be tied up. They're tied up in terms of where they're budgeted, but not spent.
Yeah, that we would not basically create another line item to say waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to be budgeted and then.
And then we can adjust if legislation adjusts, which would be tremendous. Because, if you think about it, the TLT now going to 10% is just a few $100,000 shy than our entire property tax revenue. It's going to be close to 1.8, and our total property tax revenue is just over 2.1. So that's a big deal. Yeah.
questions, and there we go.
It was just, answered it well, I just, with the permit fees and kind of what we see going on in the county for development and so forth, your answer is a good one, that supplemental part, to take a look at that, there may be some upside in revenue on permits and.
Yeah, we did a fee restructure, or we did a fee, not restructure, but we looked at fees last year, right? And we looked at department heads to see if we could increase them
Every year.
every year, so that's gonna be going forward.
So planning, you said you'd take a look at
Yes.
center roadways, and then we added $100,000 in for building permits. That,
Yeah, I want to say it was just last meeting or the meeting before where we approved the increases for the.
Yeah, and I believe that some of the stuff in building is, Garrettson might be in here, is anticipation for some of the projects that are going to be moving forward in this upcoming fiscal year?
Yes.
Lone Ranch, potentially?
Lone Ranch, the only part of Lone Ranch that we get currently is the plumbing permits. But probably beginning of October, we will be taking over the residential electrical as well.
Yeah, okay. So I think that was an estimated increase from those projects that we know are moving forward.
Yeah, we intentionally do not weigh heavy on those new projects coming in, just because they could become derailed. So we don't really bank on those until they come through. But projected, that's what we see.
Right.
and I think you said you were going to maybe walk through that opiate money thing again just a little bit to we understand that. A little unclear on that, how that worked, but I think I understand it. Maybe just it'd help, I think, to explain that just one more time. On the sheriff's side.
For the opioid funds?
Yeah.
Yeah. Director Fitzgerald, do you have that?
So as far as the opioid settlement money, we have been getting it, over the last few years, it's been kind of increasing and slowly on the decrease. It's sort of, we're just kind of working through the last of the settlements that I've been aware of. Some of the ones don't apply to us, but with the money that we have, it's available to provide certain services. We've got the opioid settlement spending report right here. We also have the Exhibit E is what we determine which are legitimate expenditures for that. And so part of what we had discussed last year was funding community resource officer with that money. So that would put more boots on the ground, have people available so that we would perhaps be able to preserve that one of the road deputies in some form or another. That didn't work out. And so we did offer that to City of Gold Beach. Gold Beach did the research, found other jurisdictions that were doing it, and they just couldn't fill the position. They lost their person, so that money still sits here. So this year, the commissioners wanted to redirect that money for a community resource officer through the sheriff's department. That'll probably be that would be a person that's going to be working with the affected individuals. Many of them you'll see living, on the harbor bench and so forth along 101. Would be the goal of that, to work at various levels, interacting with those people. So not specifically your average road deputy, but there is a resource to make that interaction successful.
And they're a sworn officer.
Yes.
Should we go into public comment? Or do you have more questions?
I don't know, if we come back to question if we go public.
We can always come back to questions.
Yeah.
All right,
Taking enough time.
public comment cards. First up, Lieutenant Crone.
Oh, Nick, can you put the microphone?
So we expected there to be elected official comments before public comments, so some of this may be out of order. I'm Lieutenant Crone. I'm the jail commander of the Curry County Sheriff's Jail. This statement was prepared by the Sheriff's Office command staff from the following: Patrol, Corrections, Parole and Probation, and the Communications Division. Director of Operations Ted Fitzgerald read a budget 25-26 budget message. In this message, under personnel, it reads, "No layoffs were required for the 25-26 fiscal year, largely due to the last year's monumental effort to ensure that staffing expenses were proportional to available revenue." Commissioner Trost then read a statement that stated, "The 24-25 fiscal year was the largest reduction in staff within the last 8 years. The greatest came in the Planning and Patrol Division." In Director Ted Fitzgerald's statement, he read, "This year, positions were created for an investigator in the District Attorney's Office, a Community Resource Officer, and an Animal Control/Civil Deputy in the Sheriff's Office, and one additional position in planning. This meant that the county was able to add 4 additional positions that do not require additional general fund resources. This statement is only valid because the Board of Commissioners is proposing to cut all sergeants and lieutenant positions from the Patrol Division. This proposal would cut 2 patrol sergeants and 1 patrol lieutenant. The proposed budget is for 5 FTE road deputies and shows the current patrol forest sergeant demoted to the forest deputy position. We expect Sheriff Ward to give a statement that the patrol supervisor's role is very broad and is most definitely required for the functional patrol division for the safety of the public and the liability of the county. Any supervisor role or duties will need to be paid out of class to deputies who do those duties. Proposed staffing would show the following span of control for the Sheriff's Office divisions as follows. The Criminal, Civil, Patrol, Search and Rescue, Marine divisions will be 1 to 61, that one person being Sheriff Ward, and that number includes the 50 volunteer search and rescue members. The current span of control is 4 to 55, which includes the sheriff and the 50 volunteers. The Corrections Division is currently 3 to 11, which includes the sheriff. Will go to 3 to 11, including the sheriff. The current span of control is 4 to 10, including the sheriff. The Communications Division is 2 to 7, including the sheriff, and there were no changes within that division. Parole and Probation is the same, 2 to 3, including the sheriff, as there were no changes in that division. For comparison, using the budget documents provided, the span of control for the Juvenile Department is 3 to 3. This includes the Board of Commissioners as the elected officials, the Director of County Operations, and then the Juvenile Director overseeing that division of the county. The Fair is 3 to 1, which includes the Board of Commissioners, the Director of County Operations, and then the Fair Manager. Issues that were found in the proposed budget for 25 to 26. The Corrections Division budget from 24-25 fiscal year was never updated to approve the promotion of a second sergeant within the division. That was authorized by the Board of Commissioners and the previous finance director. This was done to save the county money due to that FTE being paid 5% out of class and to reduce the liability on the county. Within the Communications Division breakdown, it reflects 1 sergeant and 8 FTEs, which is a total of 9. However, the budget total only reflects 8. The most glaring one, the Patrol and Criminal Civil Division, has no holiday or overtime accounted for in the current proposal. The Sheriff's Office call response protocols were read out to the public by the board in a public meeting, and the Sheriff's Office stats have been posted and provided on the county's website since September of 2024. Sorry, my The computer just... Commissioner Trost reads that the civil patrol budget is increasing from last year by $80,000. However, Ted Fitzgerald stated that we were status quo. Commissioner Trost stated that the patrol staffing coverage would increase from 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. Who decided that? If the BOC hasn't received any of the information as they have stated, how did you implement that schedule? At the request of the county treasurer, each department within the county was tasked with completing budget worksheets for the fiscal year. It was instructed that each department should project a 10% increase in personal costs. Ted Fitzgerald sent out an email to department heads and elected officials on May 15th stating that personnel cost increase were to be covered by O&C funds and to keep all budgets as status quo as possible. Worksheets were due back May 23rd, and the Sheriff's Office returned their worksheets with the following. The Marine Division showed a decrease in materials and services of 23.7% and an overall increase of 1%. The Search and Rescue showed a decrease in materials and services of 9.3% for an overall increase of 2.32%. Criminal Civil showed a decrease in materials and services of 0.8% and an overall increase of 7.4%. The jail showed an increase of materials and services of 5.2% with an overall increase of 8.6%. Communications decreased materials and services with 1.9% with an overall increase of 7.5%. Parole and probation, material and services decreased 39.1% and an overall decrease of 30%. Parole and probation had to reduce multiple services and programs due to the projected revenue from the state while attempting not to take general fund dollars. None of this information has been reflected in the proposed worksheets from the BOC for fiscal year 25-26. Thank you.
Okay. Chair, can I address one of Lieutenant Crone's comments?
Yes.
So he said that he discussed the scheduling and said, where did that executive decision come from? So I want to reiterate what I had said in that meeting. I said, this budget year, we are equipped with more knowledge and capabilities and responsibilities. For instance, now we know that the BOC has the authority to staff each department through the budget process as we see responsible within our financial capabilities. This year, we are staffing the sheriff with the following patrol resources: 5 road deputies, 1 forest patrol, 1 marine deputy, 1 community resource officer, 1 animal control, and civil server. In addition to this, the county will fund an investigator in the DA's office that will be a sworn officer who will follow up on investigations, an additional force multiplier for patrol as well, as this will take more off their shoulders. The staffing has the capacity to increase patrol coverage from a current operation of 10 hours, 5 days a week, to 20 hours, 7 days a week, should the sheriff choose to. So there's no directives. I'm simply just stating what this capacity has the ability to do. Not giving anybody any directives. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Also, this was not Lieutenant Crone's statement, that was the command staff.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sergeant Westerman?
I put my name up for that, but I do have one. For the life insurance, the question was asked why it was cut significantly in the criminal, civil, and patrol division. We did not increase staff. Well, the projected is increased, but if we're increasing staff, shouldn't that number be rising, not been cut in half or lower? It went from 1,200 down to 515.
It was an increase of 90,000, not a decrease. Is his question? Oh, not health insurance. Got it.
I show it previously at 1,200 and then decreased to 515.
Okay. Thank you.
Sheriff Ward?
Morning, Budget Committee members, actually afternoon. To start off with, let me get my glasses on. To start off with, for this next fiscal year's budget 25-26, we were given a budget worksheet, excuse me, and told to present a status quo budget with 10% increase for up costs. We were told that the up costs would be taken care of out of the recent ONC monies that came in. With only a few days to provide our proposed budget, my admin staff and I went through our entire budget and presented the status quo budget on time. Not only did we do what we were asked, but we also made additional cuts that came in lower in the budget percentage-wise than what was asked for. Then this past Thursday, we attended a budget presentation to find out that the budget we presented was not anywhere close to what we had submitted. In fact, we did not have any advance notice that the BOC had changed it. We were not informed of the change, and we were not given an opportunity to speak about the change. One of the most glaring issues is that the sheriff's budget that the BOC put together without our knowledge is that all patrol supervisors would be eliminated, which means patrol lieutenant, patrol sergeant, and the sergeant of Force, Marine, and SAR, and eliminating a sergeant in corrections. What this would effectively do is to set the sheriff's office up for a claim of failure to supervise, bringing a major liability to the county and doing disservice to our brave men and women of the sheriff's office. The existing supervisors have a great deal of duties and responsibilities along with handling their own caseloads. They are responsible for providing required supervision. They do scheduling for coverage and trainings, disciplinary investigations, approving reports, distributing reports, cover shifts, do CAD reviews, policy updates, call review, yearly evaluations, triage call-outs, caseload updates, and the list goes on and on. Supervisors are required. In the BOC's proposed budget for the sheriff's office, you want to move animal control under my office. I'm not interested in that. Animal control is a responsibility of the BOC, not the sheriff. It is presented by the BOC that there would be a full-time, non-certified employee for animal control, civil, and there are way too many things wrong with that. The BOC also wants the sheriff's office to pay 50% of the facility's maintenance worker. The BOC also wants to hire an investigator for the DA's office using TLT tax money that was meant for the sheriff's office. The BOC also wants to put emergency services under the sheriff's office. There are so many flaws with this BOC proposed budget for this sheriff's office. It just goes to show you that the BOC does not have a concept of what it takes to provide public safety. There is a reason there is a separation of powers. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, the highest elected official in the county, elected by the citizens. I will not support dismantling public services or resources. Thank you.
And last one, Sherry Olds.
I'm excited to see the sheriff show up. Mine is basic. I'm not articulate. I'm involved in all the ins and outs. But last year, as I was involved watching the budget committee and trying to save the sheriffs, which I have been involved in for a few years now, wanting to save our sheriff's department, love them dearly. Not happy with the last 9 months. But the commissioners voluntarily donated $20,000 each towards the sheriffs for patrol deputies to try and maintain some sort of respect, because I know everyone here wanted our sheriffs to try, under the circumstances, to not be the downfall it has become with the not passing of the first property taxes. Then again, it was requested $2,000 apiece for the canine. At this point, I'm going to request from the budget committee. I know it's going to sound unfruitful to some, but since no plan was given of this money, the money wasn't spent for the purpose it was intended for. There are not the amount of patrol duties that was set aside for. They got moved into the jail. I've been listening to Crone and talking to different ones, that it be returned back to the donator as what you would do. Purpose not used, it was not used for purpose intended. There's no K-9, it's not used for that. So, and the other thing was, from now on, when people want to make a donation, I'd like to see a form where if they want to have a contingency of where it can go following if it's not used for purpose intended. You know, like anyone can make a donation, not just you. People got cutbacks everywhere in the departments, but you guys were the only ones that took it out of your own personal pockets and made an additional. And that kind of, with all the things that are going on and being said, disturbs me. That the comments, the remarks, the threats that had gone on were improper. And I appreciate your guys' heart and soul, the previous commissioners that were here, heart and soul. But it was, for how long? Does it just sit in their budget forever and ever and wait for it to get used? Wait for the proper amount of deputies to be hired? I mean, why are our patrol deputies in the jail cell? Why are the people not being hired in the jail? So the patrol who have been trained with that extra money from the county back out on patrol. Where's the K-9? Where's all the stuff that needs to be done? I don't know all the details. I haven't been catching up the last couple months with issues in the family that's been going on. But those are the things I like to bring up. Also, I like to bring up with the budget committee, and that's fine with you guys. I know there's going to be an audit going on. And I would like that to know if when things are found, legal charges will be brought up, the payback to the audit, things that will happen from that, the cost in order to go through a court system. All that money set aside, you know, if need press charges, who's going to pay that back? I mean, will it be liens on properties? Well, because it's dereliction of duty. As an elected official, the dereliction of duty at this point is innocent until proven guilty. So, but my thing is, where is this all going to go? I would like to see a form of donations where people can say in this fiscal year or continue on, where do you want, pick a choice, where do you want it? If they don't use it, where do you want to have it placed? Do you want it refunded? Do you want it, you know, like you would a grant? There's a time frame, give it back to the state. There's a time frame on that part. But this was a fiscal year to help the sheriffs try to save positions. And it didn't, it fell through. I mean, in more ways than one. You know, it wasn't just property tax. It was officers leaving. And to me, failure of management. So it's just one of those things. Not that I don't want to condescend a single sheriff. I love them dearly. I still would like to work on maintain a constant type of income revenue where the sheriffs will have a lifetime guarantee of their position. You know, something in that sense. I missed out. I'm sorry. I was busy with my business. I saw the McVeigh Park part, which I have had hopes for once I got into it, but that fell through. If anyone wants to help me try to work on that one and have the state hand that back over the county, and I can bring revenue, I'd like to have it go to the sheriffs. I mean, I still have hope. And I know you guys are working really hard at it, but I still, it's under fairness that when someone donates for a purpose, it's used for that purpose. If it's not, it's returned. And it's called accountability, as far as I'm concerned. Sheriff should have hired more people into the jail, which is much easier, less, and there's involved in, and kept our patrol out on the ground. And that's how I see it. Anyways, that's what I want to talk about, and some ideas of forms for other people to make it where this doesn't have to come up every time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the public comment I have. And we can go back to some further discussion if the budget committee members have any further questions that they'd like to bring up.
So, I'm going to address a couple of the sheriff's comments.
Sure.
Statements. So, the comments were made about the supervisors. And so, just to reflect, the last time we had a balanced budget was in 2013. In 2013, the staffing in the sheriff's office was 36 FTEs. The services that they provided was a 50-bed jail, patrol, civil, parole and probation, dispatch, SAR, emergency management, no animal control. They had 4 supervisors for the entire department, the sheriff, an undersheriff, a lieutenant in patrol, and a lieutenant in corrections. No sergeant or lieutenants in dispatch. They had 1 civil deputy, emergency manager. Parole and probation had 3 deputies, and they had a span of control of 1 to 8. So this is not as if it has never been done. Now, animal control, because we are an animal control district, is a mandated service assigned to the sheriff. We have the authority to assign that to the sheriff. If he chooses not to provide the service, then that's a matter that needs to be taken up at a different time. As far as, thing is, last year, we can go back and discuss how that all went down. The reality is I think the statement was made, just give us the money and we'll figure out how to spend it. And this year, we have been, the BOC, have been the reason for many of justification as why people aren't receiving any services. We've even had people who have called who just got off the phone with dispatch telling them, if you don't like, no, it wasn't that, it was, we have nobody to send, our budget was cut, call the commissioners. And they did. So if we're going to be responsible for the scenario in which we provided the funding and he chose the staffing, being the sheriff, then this year we will go into the budget with the idea of staffing it as appropriately as we can possibly do. Now, on top of that, we are in preliminary discussions, exploring the opportunity to contract with the city of Brookings to expand coverage in South County to assist, because the reality is we are trying to be more, we're being public safety facing. The whole goal is to get as many resources out into the community as possible. And I think that's the intent. And so if the sheriff doesn't want to provide the service, we won't stop trying to work to provide the service. So that's just addressing that piece.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Any discussion items for you, Lynn? Anything?
No, I'm disappointed that we're drawing lines under discussion items that were part of the dialogue over a year ago. What's transpired since? On one hand, there's been extraordinary work on the part of our department leaders and the men and women in the sheriff's department to live within the budgets, to live within the money that our voters have allowed us to manage. And I think that's just really cool. I think many of you know that my background is such that I've had the opportunity to work with little organizations and massive organizations. A lot of them go through a knothole. just as we've gone through, but they didn't come out on the other side well at all. I think we came through it pretty well, and that's a reflection of the men and women that are here, the leadership of our organization. You were able to bring people through that knothole and continue to function. Why would we put ourselves through that same exercise again? I'm seeking a way to capitalize upon the experience that each of us in a leadership role within this county. I'm asking us to recognize the leadership gains that we've made. What are the lessons that we've learned? How to be effective and efficient with the funds that are given. Not that we wish we had, not that we hope that we have, but the money that is on the table. It's just like running a little deli in New York City. You don't buy any more pastrami than what your customers are going to allow you to buy. Here, we don't spend a dime that our voters won't assign to us to spend on their behalf. So I see that we're underscoring arguments from 13 months ago. And just since taking a position with the board, I've had more than a couple of handsful of people stop me in the grocery store, just like they stop people here in the room at the grocery store, because they know us to be leaders, and they're really disappointed with what's happened with their sheriff coverage, especially from those who live in the county. When I go to church, in church, they know me, and they come up and they say, you know, I am afraid like I've never been before. So I'm hoping that we will do better, and I'm sure we can do better, and I will work with whomever wants to make it better to the fullest extent that I possibly can. But I'm not going to spend much time looking backwards. I don't care what we want to argue about. I want to focus on how do we actually configure, even better than we've done before, this organization in order to deliver what the people are prepared to pay for and what they need. Thank you for letting me lecture.
Thank you.
So the question is, are we prepared to make a recommendation to the board to approve this budget? And if not, what changes?
I mean, the one side of the department that we haven't really discussed is the administrative side. I brought up the first part, the change from occupancy to FTE calculation has definitely put a larger amount from the departments to the admin side. One big one is, IT to start. I know that changed significantly with last year with the cyber attack, and then one-time money to jump in there. 2022 to 23 was the last year that we had kind of an idea. It was $165,000 for professional services and a total department budget of $290,000. This year we're looking at $460,000 of salary, another $100,000 of professional services, and another $200,000 of software. I know this day and age all work take place in that IT infrastructure, but
The good news is, that put us in a better position, is Director Dixon put all of the parameters in place to reduce our insurance, to make us eligible for cyber insurance up to $2 million, which when we had the cyber attack, we had $50,000 because our protocols and infrastructure were so outdated. So there's some good news in that we now will have better protection for future scenarios.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work to compare, to look back, because what we had was so criminally negligent. It was, and the administration was made aware of it. They were made aware of the holes by Kutzker Electric recommending that upgrades be made, and they chose to not spend that money.
Not do it.
They were going to wait for it. So they were spending way too little back then and not being responsible. And we also have, it's not that different from the jail. There's so many improvements that need to be made. This, essentially, over the decades, not keeping it current, that catching up makes it way more expensive. And it's true of the entire building over there. You're looking at you're fighting leaks and things that have never been. They've been patched. They put, like, we have I think the 911 gear it's got essentially a tent over it for the rain that comes through the building and puts that $1 million worth of equipment at risk. And that's not the way you address, that's not the way professionals address issues like that. We have to actually go spend the money and do it. And we're left without a choice in the IT arena because, we do need networks. It would be great if we didn't, but we do in order to run this place. We need to spend just upgrading the hardware itself throughout these two buildings in the road department is a huge expenditure that we're still, it's going to be another couple of years till we're at least kind of on a par.
A lot of it's at end of life, our phone system, et cetera. But I guess the point is that if we compare it to our previous accounting practices, we will be back where we were prior to getting things unraveled. Does that make sense? There's a reason why we had, there's a reason why we were 2 years behind in reconciling the books. There was a reason why a lot of things were even more confusing than, we're trying to simplify them as much as possible by having less transfers, et cetera, et cetera. But if we cut those, it doesn't mean that the cost of doing business is going to go down at all, or the cost of supporting those services are going to go down at all. But I think what you might be asking for is what is the calculation that creates that number? So, because it's consistent across all that. The one thing that Kena did when she came in, when she created that portion, is she wanted to make it consistent across the board per FTE. This is the cost per FTE to support all the FTEs, right? And so, because she had noticed, like, some departments were they had no costs for support, and others were paying huge dividends to support, right? For instance, the sheriff's department may have been paying a ton, where roads might not have been paying much. She just noted the disparity. And so she wanted to make it across the board. Per FTE, it costs X amount. Now, what we can get is that calculation. But I don't know if changing the methodology is the smartest move.
And I don't necessarily disagree with, spanning it across FTEs versus like square footage.
Right, building square footage?
Yeah, setup. So I don't disagree with that. Obviously, the number that you assigned to each FTE
Sure.
is the one. And as far as IT, yes, I understand that. If we redid all of our servers in-house and all of that stuff, yes, it's a large upfront capital cost. And eventually, with how fast technology moves, we'll be replacing it in 5-6 years. So that's something also to look at in that IT. How much are we, again, contingency there?
One other thing that we will, and Eric is on the phone, which I'm glad about, is we have, so we just got notice that Representative Hoyle got our jail proposal put in her appropriations bill, and we just,
But Wyden and Merkley's reps are also
they just informed us
informed us that they pushed it through as well.
on their appropriations bill, which, and that was for like 1.14, or no, sorry, for 1.4.
It's about 1.3,
1.4.
1.4 million for
So-
jail.
Should those appropriations go through, will require an immediate supplemental to get that put into jail improvements for capital improvements. So there's that one that's sitting out there too.
I just want to say that, so that, you know, when you compare square footage to the FDE, I'd like to look around and use Eric and whatever other resources we have to see if there's a methodology that makes more sense for a county this size, because neither one of those actually ever made any sense to me. It doesn't seem like it's a fair way of applying costs, but you have to have a system. So I'd like to figure out a way to make it more equitable for, what people are actually doing and how they're using those services, if we could.
So can I turn to another page? Would that be okay?
Certainly.
Would like the committee and my colleagues here to talk about the likelihood of either or not doing any kind of contribution from our road reserve to operating costs other than, and capital costs associated with road work. Have we wrestled through the good, bad, and the ugly relative to the assignment of income and/or principal of the funds?
This proposed budget is increasing the road fund contribution proposing to increase it from 1.18 to 1.21. Right, so it's a modest increase. But that's what is in this proposal.
I think what Commissioner Coker is referring to is what funds do we have available for the road department, and what infrastructure needs do we actually have an immediate use for if we did have a failure? Is that correct?
It's both. It's a stair-step matter. Where the original question is, are we seeking to apply interest off the road funds and allocating that to one or another office or department? And I have concerns about that after having investigated some of the conditions of the infrastructure that the county now has. And then, of course, the other item is, where do we go to get the kind of money that's required in order to maintain our county assets? I think as an organization, we ought to be able to say, we've got not just 31 bridges, but we have 20 healthy bridges, or we have 25 healthy bridges and we've got 5 or 10 that aren't healthy, and calculate what that's going to cost us in terms of money that we need to allocate out of our reserves in order to establish a 5-year capital improvements process. I don't hear us talking about that, and yet it is this absolute cliff that's out there after we look at the condition of the bridges and roads that we've got. Then you can say,
Yeah, I was going to say, just the cost of repairing one bridge can deplete the road fund entirely. So we have to be careful in what we were taking out of road funds, and then what are we going to invest back into road funds in order to continue to beef that up to protect our infrastructure and the economy for anything that might.
Yeah, I hadn't calculated in my mind's eye the possibility of having to replace bridges. At this point, I'm looking to be able to repair them, bring them back up to where they can carry the weight that they're prescribed to carry, what's common on the area roads. And we've got an inventory of bridges that aren't that way. The other concern I've got is that we're going to end up buckling under the weight of the increase in the maintenance cost associated with just operating 200 miles of paved roads out there. We did some checking relative to the increases since 2001 for the costs associated with road maintenance, and it's up like 71%. It's one of the most astronomical signs of inflation of any materials that you want to be able to purchase in order to keep whole our infrastructure. It's just amazing, the increase. So it's like in 2004, or pardon me, in 2021, we would spend $1 and we'd expect to get so much asphalt out of it. Now we spend that same dollar and we get maybe 35–40% of what that dollar would buy. And then you ask yourself, what's going into the road fund? Are we getting more money there outside of the interest rate that's coming in on that? I haven't been able to find any faucet that's delivering money to the road fund. Is there some?
It's been reduced, actually.
Yeah, it's off since about, for the last decade, from $40 million. So I'm hoping at least with this commission and with this group of leaderships that we have in the county, we'll recognize that, yep, we have to live within our budget. We've got to take care of our infrastructure, and we still have to deliver professional services across all of our departments and offices. And we can't rob Peter to pay Paul. We can't operate like a silo, one group against another group. We have to work together to deliver comprehensive services and support for both our constituents and our infrastructure. And I would really look poorly on the notion of putting a penny of our interest off the road fund into any operating channel or any other departmental requirement for capital other than wet nursing the roads and our bridges at this point. Thanks.
So, I missed a lot there. Did you just propose to not use the interest on road funds for any
I would look very
services?
poorly on it. I am not convinced, in light of the jeopardy that we're facing with the condition of our roads and bridges, that we have a genuine option to pull out the one income source we've got for the replenishment of funds in the road fund, which is the interest, and use that on something other than the infrastructure, tender loving care that is required.
Within this budget for this coming year, we followed the same path that we did last year, with that allocating that interest to sheriff.
Not, well, yeah, so in this, it's, like I said, last year we did 1.18, and this year it would be 1.229. So it is an increase of this year's allocation. And Treasurer Vecino would have to do the calculation. Here, I can do it real quick. Sorry, we would be dipping it a bit into principal with 1.229. That is correct. Now,
What's the balance of the road fund?
22 and some change.
I think I understand where Commissioner Coker's coming from. I appreciate that he's taken the time to look into the road. I know he met with Gary, and he's gone out and looked at some of some of the issues that concern the road department. It's a big undertaking to maintain all those roads, and those roads are what drive a lot of the commerce, the majority of the actual commerce that delivers revenue into this county and the constituents in the county. But at the same time, I know that the whole idea for making road funds available for law enforcement, that was tied to originally, as I understand it, was tied to providing law enforcement related to those roads themselves and the activities that were taking place on those roads. So I don't think it was ever intended for just general patrol across the entire. It was targeted originally. That was broadened by the governor's actions, Governor Kate Brown's actions in 2017, which I don't think was actually. I mean, I don't know that was the original intention of that legislation. However, I do think that having a part of the importance of maintaining roads, or the part of maintaining roads is making sure that legal activities are being performed on them. So I think that law enforcement is integral to that, and I think there's a tie to that. I also think that Lynn Coker's concerns about dipping into going into the principal might be partially addressed by our treasurer's plan of diversifying investments. I think that I would agree that it's never smart to use all your interest, but if we can make those accounts more profitable, then maybe there's a place where we can meet in the middle, because it is true that if you're taking all the interest every year, eventually you're going to be broke. And we will have some big things that either won't be reimbursable or we just won't have, they'll just overtake us eventually.
So on that point, and I appreciate finding other ways to amp up the amount of money that we can make off of our money. I think that's really wise, and it's been slow in coming. But I think it's a bigger issue. There are bigger opportunities that can go along with increasing our interest rate. I think because we, as a county, both in terms of our administrative and operational organizations, tend to operate like silos. I think as a community, we have our incorporated areas and we have the county, and we all think in silos.
Yeah.
And I think that is a massive disservice to our voters. I think thinking like I've got my Brookings hat on, and I don't think about the implications of the dollars relative to what I spend within Brookings, and how those very same dollars, if I would leverage them into the urban growth area, or I would combine them with another incorporated area, how much more I can get. For instance, what would it mean if we erase one of our 911 centers? We operate as a county, all law enforcement, all emergency services off of a single 911 service. And people, I've raised that opportunity with people in the county, and they almost turn pale in fear. Why, we will absolutely come to a standstill. But that's simply not the case. Today's information technology architecture is such that we can capture additional savings to the county in terms of how we provide essential services like 911 with the investment and infusion of new technology into displacing old ways of doing business. What would it mean for us to do something like that? There'd be a capital outlay, but from an operational perspective, it could be $1 million a year into the county's pocket, and to the city's benefits too, because they would have up-to-date backup. County would benefit up-to-date backup, and we would all operate off of a single 911 center. Now, at 30,000 feet, that looks pretty feasible. It's always the devil's in the detail by the time you get into it. But who's talking to the right people about finding the devil and taking care of the devil so that we can move forward with something like that? I think it's going to take out of the silo thinking by our cities and by our county. Oh, and I love the notion of combining the opportunities to do patrol coverage into our urban growth areas using other kinds of resources that are available? Can we get more for our dollar if we combine our patrol effort using the other communities? I bet we can. I bet we can. But as long as we are stubbornly tied to the past ways of doing business, we are going to misserve our constituents. Let's take advantage of taking the silos down and thinking of alternative ways of delivering the services for which our dear, dear taxpayers hope that we will provide.
Real quick, if I may, it seemed like last year, we had this discussion, we were at 17, maybe? How'd we get to 22?
Reimbursement, going back and doing our job.
Oh, the
Had been
FEMA?
done for the last few years.
All the FEMA funds that started coming back in?
A lot of them hadn't been billed for years. And so we missed a few, but we got in under the deadline on a lot of it, so.
What's the lady's name in the road department that?
Carrie Dexter.
She caught a lot of those and found millions of dollars for the road department that needed to be collected.
I told her I'm gonna buy her a cup of coffee.
And I just have one thing that needs to be updated, and that's in regards to the Marine Patrol position. We received the updated federal fund reduction impact statement. However, in reviewing this and in sharing this with our legal counsel, Fitzgerald, this isn't a contract that we can approve with a specific wording in here. The last sentence says, until we secure additional funding, we will strive to accomplish the goals set previously in our program narrative the best we can with the limits set by this reductions, but there is no guarantee.
So that means we don't have a contract. You don't sign a contract
I mean,
and say that.
I guess just on my initial,
Very unprofessional to put that in a contract.
well, my initial take is I'm sure there's some kind of a stipulation in there that says if services aren't provided, XXX will happen. So I don't,
Those clauses are all within the
yeah, so
contract, so
I think that if
that needs to come out.
that sentence can just be out and the contract will cover if in the case that it's not being fulfilled.
Right.
It's already built in there. We don't need to probably
So if that
stipulate
can
that.
get updated and resent over, we can approve that and then.
An optional statement for reduction of services.
We don't need editorializing in a contract. You just, if you do it or not.
So it's an optional thing that the Marine Board didn't even
It's okay.
require.
um,
But I can take that, take it out, it's fine.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, that's the only thing I had for that one item.
So, thoughts?
Well, here's my, we're just volunteers, and so, I don't know what we do. But, I think Sheriff's here today, and that's a step hopefully in the right direction, and I like what Lynn had to say. I think looking back's not gonna do us any good, a lot of water under the bridge here. But I do think whatever we do, we want to set our departments up for success as much as we can. And so, we have a bucket of money that we have to allocate. The voters spoke very clearly that no more coming, we understand that. And that's where we sit. I did have an opportunity to talk to the sheriff after the last meeting, both Nick and I did, and there were some concerns. He shared some of them today.
Hey, Dan.
I would just advocate that.
Dan, I think can you pull that microphone? I think
Oh, sorry.
Dave's trying to hear what you're saying, and
I said Nick and I had a chance to talk to the sheriff and some of his team a little bit after the last meeting, and I would just say that whether you do it now or you do it down the road and are willing to make some adjustments, I think that making sure that the structure that you're proposing is workable. And I think we'd be remiss if we at least didn't, if there's ability to, I was asking a lot, but ability to come together and sit down, just maybe you and look at the chair and the sheriff, or one of us might attend or whatever, but I think just to review this new structure, just to make sure it will work. We don't want to set it up to fail. And so I would just say that opportunity might be here. I don't know if it is or not, but I would just say that whether you do it now or post passing a budget and make some adjustments to that, I strongly urge you to do that to make sure it's successful.
I would advocate for that as well. I think that right now, with the timeline that we were left with our finance director leaving, this, like I said, is intended to be a status quo budget, more or less. You know, there's some, that was my intention to move this thing forward. But then as we go forward, yeah, if we could proceed with meetings and there are going to be a lot of changes for. I mean, we really do have. We have to think if we're actually going to get the $1.4 million, that's going to impact the jail and its workability. There's going to be a lot of work being done in that space over the next year. That's planning. Things have to be thought of just on that side alone. But I think that yeah, going through each one, meeting and figuring out what can work and what won't. That's the only way that we can go forward. So, and if we have to modify, then we'll do it in a supplemental immediately. I think most of that's going to be addressed with all the departments within the first quarter. So, sheriff's office is no different. We just have to kind of get through this scenario and then move forward.
You know, I guess I would just say we know there's no more money, so we have the money we have. You have a structure you put forward. My question is, do you take today and talk about that? We come back tomorrow after that discussion, or do you do it after that? But the money's still the money. The money's not going to change, so we understand that. And I would just say, what decision like you have to make, you're running the county, not us, would be, do you sit down today, we come back tomorrow, see if there's any different structure that you want to put together or not? That's all I'd say.
I'd like to see the sheriff organization come back and show us how they're going to implement the plan that we've put out there, as opposed to digging in their heels and saying, we're going to do it some other way. The only reason I'd ask for that is because there is an array of, intended to be a comprehensive array of both mandated and needed services that are incorporated in what we've asked them to take on. And if I weren't on the board, I'd be asking the same thing. Would you please look at delivering all the mandated services and the services I need you to deliver? And so as I sit on this side of the dais, the comment is still the same. And when I listen to what's been proposed by the department, is that we'll take the money and we're going to carve out some things that we don't want to do. They're going to carve out some things that we don't like to do, and we're going to go off and have our next year. And I'm saying, let's not do that. Let's figure out how to implement what's been proposed and improve it. If there's a way to improve that and embellish it with better, with more crisp performance, with higher performance, then let's hear about that. But just automatically turning around and dismissing it, I'm not ready to accept that.
I agree. My understanding is not accurate. My understanding is you're proposing to fund, certain positions, and if those positions don't get filled, then the funding's not there. Is that incorrect?
Yes, and those positions represent the capability to deliver services.
Right. I understand.
Right.
And so I think
No, I think the funding's there.
I mean, I may be misunderstood, so let me make sure I'm on the right page with you guys. So you're going to fund the new positions you're funding will be filled at those rates, and if they don't fill those, then those funds aren't there, right? They don't just get the money and decide what they want to do. These are,
specific, the funds are identified for specific positions. Yes.
so if we say yes, they're not going to have lieutenant. Right? They're not gonna have
In
the-
patrol.
Right. So they're gonna-
Correct.
Those positions that we talked about are going
It
to,
would go from 3 road deputies to 5 road deputies, plus community resource officer.
what you outlined is
Yep.
going to happen. Right? So the sheriff can't say, well, I'm not going to do that, and still take the money and do what he wants to do. That's what I understand.
Correct. It's a net 2 additional resources for the sheriff's office.
So I'm just saying, if there's concerns about that implementation, is it worth the discussion now that we're here and he's here? And I agree with Len, more specifics need to happen, but I don't think it has to happen in this public forum. I think it happen with one-on-one work, but
I think what's going to happen is, it's going to happen over time, right? Obviously, the working relationship has, whether we want to address that or not, has been severed, right? And so what we heard today is, I'm not going to accept the additional resources that you're giving me. I won't provide that service, and you're going to give me this. And I think what we need is, we need to be shown over time that we will be working together for the common interest of providing the best public safety possible with the funding that we have. And I think over time, this is absolutely something we need to revisit.
One of the other things too that several people have come to us with, and we also have issues with, why do we have a couple of supervisors not supervising anybody underneath them, yet they're being paid that?
Right, the jail commander is right now supervising road deputies. At least that's what the public is being told. That the patrol deputies are in the jail. So, let's get these,
discussion, obviously.
and I guess my point is, hey, let's get these deputies in, let's get them hired, and we have enough hired, now let's talk about getting a supervisor for them. But until then, let's get as many assets as we possibly can afford out to the people, instead of turning them down and saying we're not going to do those things.
As far as the funds, the money, I understand it. I know that's all there is.
So Jay, what would it look like?
And so I've only been on this budget committee as long as Dan and Nick. I'm deferring. No, just kidding.
Yeah, well, it's a lot longer than me. What would it look like in your mind's eye to take a next step relative to establishing an agreed-upon budget for the sheriff's office? What would be a next step? Not a home run, just, is there, in your mind's eye, what are the ingredients to get on first base?
Well, that's a pretty, there's a lot in that, right, to unpack. I guess my thing would be, in my purview, the first thing we have to do is settle on what we feel is best course of action going forward. It's the working within that course of action that's going to determine all of the following steps, in my opinion. So, for instance, last year, he said, give us the money and I'll figure out how to spend it. And we ended up doing that. And then we took the responsibility for a lot of that publicly through almost every entity, even deputies responding on site saying, it's the commissioner's fault. So, if we're going to take on the responsibility, then I think we take on the obligation of funding it the way we see most appropriate. And if the sheriff wants to work with us within that, towards next steps and future solutions and finding those answers, then I think those are the steps that we take. If the sheriff chooses not to, then
But what I would want to ask the public and then what you stated earlier is, and I'll just read your wording here. So the staffing has the capacity to increase patrol coverage from 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Correct?
Why would we not want to do that?
Or, we aren't the ones doing that.
No, but
We
we're
would be
creating
providing the opportunity to provide that.
Right.
So I know what you're trying to get at, Lynn, in terms of next steps, but I think at this point, next steps are action steps. We had 9.5 months to have conversations that never happened. We had 9.5 months of asking people to come in here to talk to us that never occurred. And I said a few months ago, we're going into this with not as much knowledge as we need to make the best decisions we can make. And we're going into it with what we have and the information that's been provided. It's a little, well, I'll just leave it at that. Sorry, I should reflect on that to you because you are very insightful. What do you see as prudent or possible next steps that can be taken? Because sometimes it takes an outside view. I'll be the first to tell you that, going through what we went through last year has been hard on everyone. And so, maybe an outside lens on that solution is necessary. So, what would you think?
I would turn to Dan and the sheriff and suggest that we take the BOC plan, actualize it to the extent we can, come back and demonstrate not just good faith, but great planning on how best to implement that, along with gaps that tell us if we would change this versus that, then we can get greater coverage on behalf of the people who have their trust in us. So that's a question in front, and I would suggest that somebody from the BOC be available to serve in some capacity in order to advance that actualization of the BOC plan.
How do we move that forward?
I don't know, Ted, any fences around? Are there any fences around that keep Dan and the sheriff from looking at how to actualize the BOC plan using?
I don't know if I signed up for that.
That's appropriate.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't know if I signed up for that yet.
Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate. I think that you sort of have to kind of remember what you're doing here. You guys are following the law that you are empowered to enforce. And last year, we did not do that, which resulted in failure of delivering any meaningful sheriff's patrol to the county. Okay, so I think backing off on following the law would probably be
Well, I think
a
what he's
violation of your fiduciary duty.
No, I think what he's getting at is more of having a long-term collaborative approach, which is what Dan is saying I'm not signing up for.
Well, I agree that the long-term collaborative, but how would you get to the long-term collaborative approach? Where do we start that?
I think what he's saying is move forward with this with a long-term collaborative approach to try to improve it.
Yeah, I think you just go forward with what you have, and then we, like we spoke earlier, then we have meetings regarding the next interim budget that will no doubt be required almost immediately so that we can make this plan work, right? This is, you're communicating the framework that you want the sheriff to move forward with. That's all this budget is doing. And then we can see, the sheriff can then bring his concerns to you, and we can fine tune that. But somebody has to take action, and the reality is on the budget itself is we were left with a very short timeline, and we need to get this interim budget approved so that we can get it out to the newspapers, so that we can approve it, so that we are not closed for business July 1st. So now, is that a thing that I wanted to have happen? Absolutely not. I didn't want to have our finance director leave with no notice. And so, but that's where we are, and that's why we're going to be spending the months of July and August working through the actual implementation for each department. And so, but in order to do this, I mean, you've basically what you're doing with this budget is you're informing all the departments, including the sheriff's office, of your intentions regarding how you are going to be spending the money that's allocated to the county this year.
Right. And Dan, I understand that I was enlisting you in a way that probably stretched your imagination and any courtesy, so I apologize.
You don't need me there. You guys should be able to sit down and.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. 100%. And so, I mean,
As long as the parties are all looking forward, like Commissioner Coker said.
and I would, so at this point, I mean, I would entertain a motion to, or I will move, I guess I'm not the chair, I'm not entertaining anything.
Yeah.
I will move that we approve this adopted budget for BOC consideration for final adoption with the intention that we will be having supplementals in the first quarter of the fiscal year to dial in all of the things, and we'll have time at that point to show good intent and communication and dialogue and the things that will move it forward that are necessary to do so.
And just to clarify on that, we'll be meeting with departments on those issues between now and
Sure.
the beginning of the fiscal year. So it's not stopping anything.
Second.
Okay, so there's a first and a second. And I'll call for the question. Committee Member Bratton.
Yes.
Committee Member McNair.
Yes.
Committee Member Swanson.
He had to text me that he is off.
He's offline? Okay.
But he did mention that he is not to approve without more information on the sheriff's department.
So he's a nay.
I don't know if that would change had the last
Okay.
conversation been party to or not, but.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Coker.
Aye.
Commissioner Trost.
Aye.
And myself, aye as well. Okay, motion passes 5-1.
So, Eric, now
Yes.
we'll have to get that prepared for publishing, is that correct?
Yes, the LB1, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all right, and you'll work with our team on that?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work you've put into this. And thank you, Nick, and Dan,
thank you,
and
guys.
Dave. This is, for such critical time periods, we couldn't ask for more help.
Yep.
So thank you.
And if there's no more discussion, I will adjourn this meeting at 3:01 PM. Thank you.